What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Baldwin Book Spotlight. My name is Drew Heath. I'm one of the co-founders of Baldwin Books and your host for today. Today, we're switching up the format a little bit. Usually, we bring on former professional athletes or former high-level college athletes who have now transitioned into a different field or career. Today, we're bringing on someone very, very special who's been observing the way sports and social justice reform have gone hand in hand over the past couple decades. He is the current department chair and associate professor of organizational communication at Loyola Marymount University. He is also the founder of CSR Global Consulting, which assists organizations in developing and implementing their social responsibility initiatives. And he is the author of the Black Athlete Revolt, the sport justice movement in the age of Black Lives Matter. We're bringing on the very special Dr. Shaun Anderson. Shaun, what's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me here. And just thinking about your previous guests, I feel honored to be in this space.
No. I mean, when you reached out, we were talking about doing this. I felt like it went hand in hand perfectly. I honestly do mean that. Not that we're talking right now, but I think your book is amazing and touches on a bunch of different topics. But before we get into that, kind of what's going to jump into you a little bit. We always ask our guests, where'd you grow up? What was your childhood like? And because you are writing about sports, how were you first introduced to the sports world and just sports culture?
Yeah, so I grew up in rural Arkansas, so small city. If you've heard of Little Rock, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Arkansas, where I grew up, is about 30 minutes south of Little Rock.
Okay.
Grew up, it was a rather large family household. It was me, my mom, my two older sisters were all living with my grandparents.
Okay.
And so in this house growing up, and how actually I got introduced to the sport world was because my grandfather was really big into baseball and was a big St. Louis Cardinals fan. As many people know, Arkansas doesn't have a pro team, so you gotta be a fan of the surrounding states. And so he would talk to me about sports, and he would also talk about kind of the political platform. In a sense, he would always try to get me as a little kid to watch this show called the Tony Brown Journal. I remember the show from years ago, and he tried to connect the two. And as a kid, of course, I was like, I don't want to hear none of that. I just want to, just live life. But he was trying to instill into me the importance of sport, not only as a place of entertainment, right? Not only as a place to where your goals and dreams are to get out and make it into the pro level, but also how sport influences society in many ways. And so, I was, one of the kids, even growing up then, in the South, football is the thing that you need to play.
Right.
Played little league, football here and there, played, junior high school football here and there, not that much. But I always had this thought process of, well, okay, I can play or I can own a team, or I can continue to see how sports is influencing society in so many ways. And so that kind of launched that attitude towards seeing how sport is just making a global impact. And that's how we started it.
No, I think that's awesome. And I was just, that last comment you made, I kind of had a similar experience too. After I finished college, was trying to do like some overseas tryouts and stuff. And I just realized like the other side of sports, like who are the people like calling the shots, who are the people pulling all the strings, who are the people making the big decisions.
Right.
I think Shaq has a famous line. It's nice to get this big check, but you want to be the person writing the check, not the person receiving it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean that's also awesome too. You had a figure in your life who also talked to you and showed you about the importance of what sports can play in society. I guess kind of fast forwarding a little bit, what was the conscious decision you made to kind of make this your life's work? It's not always easy conversations. It's not always easy topics. I myself also work in education at a private school out here in San Francisco. I'm on the equity leadership team where we have these conversations. Not everyone's equipped to stand up front or lead these topics. So I guess twofold. What made you want to get into it, and then when did you kind of realize, all right, I kind of have like a skill set or a temperament to kind of lead these discussions?
Well, yeah, so it kind of goes back again to that high school period of kind of discovering what's next and where to go. For me, I was thinking initially like, well, I want to go and be the next great Stuart Scott, right?
Yep.
Go be the next anchor on ESPN. And it initially started with being a like a small time producer for a local television station after college, and I fell in love with the research, and I was kind of convinced by an old professor, hey, you have a knack for research, you understand in society. Why don't you go pursue a master's degree? So I did that, and then once I got that, another professor in the master's program was like, hey, take this further and go pursue a PhD. And so for me, it was, no, I think I'm gonna stop here. This is not, I don't feel like going anymore.
School.
It's enough school. I want to go work in the industry. Worked in communication consulting for a little bit for a couple of places. Went through the recession a few years back. Found myself kind of trying to, at that crossroads of life, right? Trying to figure out where to go. The same professor came back and was like, hey, you love sports. You say Muhammad Ali is your favorite athlete of all time, and you like how he influenced society back then. Why don't you go out there and be the creator of knowledge and see where sports is taking us to the future? And I was like, well, I have nothing else to do, so I might as well apply to these programs. And I got into West Virginia University a few years back. And it was at that point where I began to really see, wow, okay, I could take a look at the history of sports, where we are now. I can build research. I can do, engage in interviews, write a bunch of articles about how this is happening. And so it got to the point to where when I was working on my dissertation, it was actually working with Major League Baseball on their diversity outreach initiatives and the struggles that they were having.
Yes. Yeah.
And so what we found initially was that although they have these programs out there that are trying to bring in more Black kids into the game of baseball, it's still a struggle. They created these programs back in 1989. Still a struggle today. But one of the largest things that I found was that there was no measurement of success relative to the programs that they put out in all of their communities. It was, kids show up and we took them to the beach for the first time in their lives. That's success. Or we packed them lunch for the week. So that's success, Not saying that those things are bad, but it's not giving us any tangible knowledge of what is going to be impactful for them to be drawn into the game. And so that was the thing that I wanted to push forward with. Again, we see sport largely as this entertainment platform, and we've seen athletes from times past to today talk about issues. But what is the thing that's moving towards the future, I should say, is how athletes are now. They're, of course, engaging in protests, but they're transcending that in many ways and are now engaging in conversations on policy reform and policy change. So in many cases to say enough is enough. And so from that baseball study, the last 8 or 9 years have been focused on how, again, impactful sport can be on the global level of social change.
No, that's amazing. And I was thinking we had another guest on the show a while back, Chris Singleton, and he's a former MLB player. We were talking about the same thing, just how the number of Black kids playing baseball has just been dropping pretty much since forever. And then we have all these amazing players, whether it be Jackie Robinson or some other players you mentioned in the book. And I do think, trying to keep it in sports, but it is funny just seeing other initiatives, whether it's been within sports or other stuff, where it feels like they are putting a Band-Aid on like a gash, or like just like you mentioned, like it's not bad to give out box lunches or to do a backpack giveaway or stuff like that, but how is this really fixing the issue? Or if your intention is to get more kids to play baseball, where's the crossover in this? So it's interesting. We'll come back to that later. I got some questions about if companies are sincere with their intentions in those regards. But to continue to jump into the book, I learned a lot and found out a bunch of new information. There was definitely some stuff I'd heard about before and some figures I knew about, but definitely didn't know that the Kentucky Derby and the popularity of black jockeys which is what kind of kicked off the sport. Didn't know about Jackie Robinson's like start off in other sports that he played. In my mind, he was just this baseball guy.
Right.
So was there any information you discovered while researching or writing the book?
Yeah, it's what I've known, but it's in many cases seeing how impactful it's been in our country for so many years, and it's taken it back to many people kind of associate sport and politics with the civil rights movement, and rightfully so in many cases. But taking it back to the Kentucky Derby, you're talking about it was started in 1875, just 10 years after the Civil War. And so between 1875 and 1896, you saw these prominent black jockeys sort of earning and garnering the attention of the millionaire athletes that we see today. But 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson came out, separate but equal. A few years after that, these athletes were no longer associated with the sport.
Right.
And so that was really the largest segue of sport and politics, in our society, unbeknownst to those athletes at the time. Yeah. So if you're talking about more than 150 years ago, and then you juxtapose that to when this country was founded, in many cases, you're talking about a third of the history of our country, more or less, has been associated with sport and its larger conversations on politics. Yeah. And so, again, many of these things that were put together, especially in the history of chapter 1 in the book, were many things that I knew, but it just gave me this perspective of how ingrained sport has been in our society beyond the entertainment platform. Yeah. And so that was the biggest discovery for me at that point. And it really launched everything else in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Fast forward a little bit in the book and also just in the chronological time and stuff. Yeah. It was funny because I do remember that my childhood was like Michael Jordan Bulls and the 90s and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And it was bringing back that, like, yeah, I don't remember growing up seeing too many athletes taking stances or being outspoken about political positions, whether it be left or right. And the one, I guess, infamous quote from Jordan is that Republicans also buy sneakers too, which he obviously got a lot of backlash from at the time. And now, just like you mentioned before, we are seeing, when you mentioned athletes are actually out there now, I'm thinking of like Jaylen Brown, who's been out there marching in protests, and other athletes who have been vocal about stuff. Do you ever see it going back, like maybe an ebb and flow of going back to the 90s with just the increase in salaries and with like tomorrow's the NBA draft, there are going to be some guys who might get $80 million a shoe contract and a commercial before they even have to practice. And now you're seeing, if you're the 9th or 10th guy on an NBA roster, you're making a pretty decent salary now, where maybe in the 90s you're making six figures, which is still good, but you're not making the 3.5 million or the 4.4 million. Do you ever see it going back to where maybe the money is silencing some else?
Yeah, I actually think that it is in many ways. but there's an addition to that as well. So again, you're thinking about the 90s, like you say, contracts, TV rights, all of these things were booming at that point in time. So of course, those athletes were like, I don't want to lose my money.
Right.
But think about that again, TV, the technology, all of these things kind of brought about this increase in what the athletes could earn. Same thing as today, where we see Twitter, Instagram, all of these athletes sort of using these social media platforms to speak their mind about something, whether it's how much they should earn or being vocal about pay equity, all of these things. But what I think would be the reason as to some athletes would kind of revert back to that 90s tendencies would be because of all of the vitriol that they would receive on, say, a Twitter, where everybody is a political commentator, where everyone is a expert in societal challenges, where you can of course buy your blue check on Twitter now, and you're verified, and so anybody has any and everybody has an opinion about what you should or shouldn't do, and then that brings up another situation relative to, well, does this affect the mental health of the athlete, getting so much brought to you about the things that you care about? And so that may cause some of them to become silent. And that's unfortunate, because at the end of the day, a lot of people are depending on you as far as your skill set, what it is that you are concerned with relative to society. But there's only so much you can take in before you would have to shut things down for a while. And that is the influence that I would think would cause some of those athletes to kind of revert back to staying silent, not pushing forward. But you do have some who will push through that despite.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think Colin Kaepernick was a big part of your book. And I think mentioned in the book, also just my observation of him, as you just mentioned, is the mental fortitude he has to have to push through all this. You mentioned the former Chris Jackson. I'm going to mess up his name now. I can't pronounce it correctly.
Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, right?
Yeah. Same thing. We've seen players in the past who have been blackballed for their stances or being outspoken. And just the mental fortitude he has to have, or Kaepernick has to have, to go through all that and then still want to host tryouts for NFL teams, or if you are still playing, to have the bravery to stand up or to speak out about stuff. And I think it kind of goes both ways, where some people think if you have a bigger platform, it might be easier to speak out. That might actually bring on more pressure. And then on this flip side, well, if I'm just a bench warmer, who am I to speak up? Like, who's gonna listen to me if I'm the third string quarterback? So I think it is there is a whole mental component that I don't think people take into factor all the time. Kind of on that note, as I mentioned before, do you think some companies or even some athletes are now jumping on hashtags or movements to benefit their brand? I personally, I think I see it more with corporations, where they put out a brand or they put out a commercial and it's like, oh, you're kind of missing the point, or it's a little distasteful. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think maybe any awareness is good awareness type of thing?
Yeah, that kind of speaks to the any type of PR is good PR, right? In many cases. But I have to agree. I see it more with the corporations, that they will jump on a trend to in many cases say that, oh, I am responding and being empathetic to the issues that we're seeing in our society. Well, you're seeing that, and it sounds good, but that also is probably going to increase those jersey sales or those shoe sales because of this thing that you find yourself being a part of. You brought up Kaepernick, and when he was going through the whole situation of being blackballed by the NFL, Nike swooped in and they did a commercial, and not to say that the commercial was bad. It wasn't bad. It was actually, a very thoughtful commercial, but it was, perfect timing by Nike to step in
Right.
and say, here we are to fight for this freedom. And so I would have to say that, especially in the sport world, and especially with dealing with all of these social justice issues, they're very reactionary. There's no standard or baseline to say that has been established at any point to say that they've always been concerned about these issues. It's just a lot of the pressure now that they are getting from society to be better.
Right.
And so, while it could be in many cases a publicity stunt, I think that as it continues to grow and people continue to call out these organizations and some athletes who may be trying to use it for exploitation purposes, we can continue to call them out and say, okay, yeah, you did this, but you really need to be careful on how this message is spread. Right. And you need to be really concerned about these particular issues. Then we may begin to see some positive, tangible results relative to brand activism in sports, things like that. It's going to take some time, but in many cases, you could say that it's a good idea to say that, okay, now you'll talk about something, but you really have to move beyond the PR pitch.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the process, right?
Yeah. No, while you're speaking too, I was thinking, whether it's corporations or just society at large,
yeah,
these activists or people who take a stand tend to get their flowers years later or after. It's never in the moment.
Right.
You brought up Muhammad Ali as one of your favorite athletes. He was also mentioned in the book. He was popular in the sense at the time for what he did, just because it was creating a lot of noise and attention, but he wasn't getting the same type of love and admiration for that stance that he did later in life in the moment. I think the same thing for Kaepernick. I do remember the Nike commercial, and now, I think his jersey might be one of the top selling jerseys. When he initially took that knee, there wasn't a lot of love for him, at least from the mainstream media. So yeah, it's just an interesting topic, and I completely agree with everything you said. And there is that fine line of all PR is good PR in a sense sometimes, and but you do want to see people's intention and sincerity in certain situations. So it's just very interesting. I don't think we'll ever find the right mix per se, but you gotta take a helping hand when you can, I guess.
Yeah.
What are some recommendations you have for young people that want to get involved or might be interested in even like following your footsteps, maybe that just want to get in this line of work and just help out?
Yeah, and I had to learn this right over time, that when you have a cause or an idea or a concept that you think will be a contribution to society, sometimes you have to go at it alone. And what I mean by that is, that doesn't mean that you can't have supporters and people who are going to help you get to that point. But sometimes you'll put out an idea, like say a Kaepernick, to talk about some type of issue, and you're going to get the most hate, the most vitriol, the most just negative comments that you've probably will ever see in your life. And could you get to the point to where, even though these things hurt and they can be crushing sometimes, they can knock you down, can you get back up and develop that strategy to build out what it is that you're trying to do? That will be the true test of whether or not you will succeed with that. With this book, even, I sent it out to like 5 or 6 different publishers. All were like, great idea, but I don't know, this might be a little too controversial, right now, all this stuff. And so reached out to it. The final one actually was this publisher, and they were excited. And so we put it out there. And so I would say that if you could get to the point to where you can build a strategy, work with those people who want to support you. They may not always understand it, but they're going to be there and be in your corner. Find those people, build out your strategy, and implement it, and revise and resubmit accordingly. So those would be some of the things that I would say will be the challenge. In academia, as mentioned, that I serve as department chair, so I'm essentially managing faculty and students in one of the largest departments on the campus, and I'm probably one of the most rare situations, because it's not a lot of Black brothers out here with doctorates,
right,
yet alone running an academic department.
right.
And so again, that goes back to the belief in yourself, what it is that you do, how you're going to push forward with it despite anything that negative that may come your way. I could talk about this all day. I need to probably pass out my contact information for people to ask me further, but those would be some of the steps that I would say initially to put out a cause or an idea like that.
Yeah. Oh man, you hit it right on the head so many times, and that was awesome. And the main thing is you will be alone at some points. You just got to stay strong and push through, and stick to your beliefs. I think that might be a whole other book coming from you on that topic.
Yeah.
You kind of touched on it, which might be a good segue. What were some of the difficulties writing this book? You mentioned it was kind of hard to get it published. What are some other obstacles you face, whether it be the logistical, like personal writing it, or just trying to get it out there?
No, it's interesting, and like you say, you're in San Francisco, I'm in Los Angeles, and so the thing about LA is that if you are not on time for something, you're going to be super late. Or if you're trying to get somewhere from A to B, you got to deal with the traffic. Like my home, where I live, is not close to my university. I have to drive an hour and a half just one way. That's great traffic, right? And so it's learning how to balance the time and taking care of all the other duties of the things that I need to do throughout the day. So I would find myself getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes to try to push out a couple of hours of writing. It will be great, but then it's the thinking about, what is up with this sentence? Why am I so stupid? Why does it sound so bad? As you're writing, because it's always that inner critic, right?
Yeah.
You're doubting yourself on one thing, you're loving one area, you're skipping chapters, you kind of, so you're trying to put all of this together. And so those would be many of the challenges of writing the book, is, of course, being okay with that first draft just being a shitty mess, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And you going back to change it. And I had to learn that in writing this book. And I'm actually working on my second book now. And now that I understand that concept, it's much easier.
Yeah.
But those were some of the initial things pushing this first book forward.
Nice. That was actually one of my next questions. Was your new book coming out, Sport for Global Good? Can you speak on, I know it's not out yet, I know you're still in the process of writing it. Can you just speak on some of the things you'll be talking about in that next book?
Yeah, so this next book is actually building, in many cases, the blueprint that sport organizations can use when they develop their social responsibility initiatives. And so again, I take it back to LA, and there are so many global sporting events that are going to happen over the next few years. The World Cup 2026, which culminates with the Olympics in 2028.
Okay.
And so LA is essentially trying to establish itself as the epicenter of sport and entertainment in this country. And they say, to prepare for the Olympics, we're going to eradicate traffic. We're going to build a better metro system. And I'm like, I'm going to do this in
A couple of
less than a
years.
decade. What's happening with that? I mean, you might get a little corner situated, but not the entire
Right.
county. And so then you have new stadiums being built in communities that are usually left out of the conversation when it comes to community development.
Mhm.
So if you're talking about Inglewood, they did not want the SoFi Stadium that the Rams and the Chargers share.
Right.
The LA Clippers are going to build a stadium right across the street from it.
Yeah.
And so increased traffic, gentrification,
Mhm.
all of these things. And so this book will serve as the resource as to how sport organizations can say, for example, if it comes to community development and the people in those communities,
Mhm.
how can you collaborate with them to build those communities together instead of just having this one-sided thing where people are losing jobs and are getting kicked out.
Right.
So that's the goal of this book. I'm back to that 5:30 in the morning writing. So
There you
actually,
go.
before I got on here with you, it was a 2-hour session of writing one of the chapters. So I'm excited about it, and it should be out 2024 at the latest,
Okay.
early 2025.
Nice, man. No,
Yeah.
I'm excited for that. And I think it's funny, as I mentioned, like doing a little DI work for my current job. That's always one of the questions is, what are the next steps? Right. I feel like once you get comfortable having the conversation, or you can bring your colleagues or whoever, family or friends, to talk about stuff.
Right.
All right, well, now that we're comfortable talking about it, what are the next like actionable items to make stuff happen? And then, yeah, no, I think that's awesome too, because I think that's, at least for me, being a fan of the World Cup, that's one of the knocks, is that whichever city hosts the World Cup usually goes bankrupt, or like these big stadiums get built up in usually poor neighborhoods and they can't use it for anything. And then you knock down all this housing, so where all those people go. So no, that's going to be interesting. I totally agree. To anytime you hear we're going to build 4 new highways, or it's like we got 18 months. Like, what are you talking
What
about?
are we doing? You can put a stop sign up at that point, but not.
Right. Well, we fix the potholes first.
Exactly.
Let's get some stuff going on here.
Yeah.
To finish it up, actually, I saw you recently posted you're on the new 30 for 30 film on ESPN about the American Gladiators.
Yeah.
Just tell us like how you got involved with that, what that whole experience was like. I'm a fan of the whole 30 for 30 series, so I thought that was super cool. So yeah, just speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I have my website that I just put all of my information, all of my writing, other videos, that I've done before, in media interviews. And so the director, Ben Berman, of this most recent documentary, reached out a couple of years ago and was like, hey, Professor Anderson, we see all of your work. We see that you talk about sport and how it impacts society. Was wondering if you'd be interested in talking about some of those things and kind of helping us solidify how sport influences society with this new documentary that we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, sure. So I would be happy to do it. What are the next steps? And it was like, okay, you have to meet us in a secret location. You got to sign this NDA, right? And this was like in the middle of COVID at its height.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I had to go there and take the COVID test.
Oh.
And so it was about a 3-hour conversation on helping them, again, merge the concepts of sport, media, the American Gladiators, and how that influenced sort of the first reality TV sort of scenario back in the 90s. And so just we engaged in all of that. And then they were like, hey, because of all the help you've given us, do you want to be featured in a section in it? And I was like, sure, because again, as a kid, coming up, I was like, I want to be on ESPN. I want to be a sports anchor.
Right.
And it's funny how it kind of has come back to the situation to where I wanted to be a sports anchor, but I'm using sport on an even larger platform, in this case. And so that's how that came about. Excited about it. Everybody was calling me, "Hey man, we saw you on ESP." And I was like, yeah, I appreciate that. So that's how they got in contact with me. And since that point in time, it's been other people reaching out, wanting me to be on other documentaries. And so it's good. It's a good thing.
That's awesome, man. Opening
Yep.
doors and kind of a full circle moment for you too.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Mhm.
Usually at this part, I ask for book recommendations, but we're just gonna plug your book. So everyone, please go out and get the Black Athlete Revolt. Where can they purchase your book?
People can purchase the Black Athlete Revolt, any bookstore where books are sold, whether that's Amazon or with my publisher, Rowman and Littlefield, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, any of those platforms. It's even in Walmart. So if you go to Walmart, you can go online. It's there. You can check it out on my website. There's a link there at www.Shaun SHAUN Mark MARQ Anderson ANDERSON.com.
Awesome. Shaun, brother, I appreciate you, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. Everybody else, check you guys out next time. Peace.